Senate will come to order. Sergeant at Arms will close the doors. Members will return to their seats. Members and guests will please silence all electronic devices. Leading the Senate in prayer this morning is Senator Lisa Grafstein of Wake County. All members and guests will please stand.
Good morning. I won't try to move that. There's a metaphor here, I think. I'm not trying to. There you go. Thank you. Good morning. We are in the period in the Hebrew calendar between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, which is Monday, so thank you for no Monday votes. This 10-day period is called the High Holy Days, or the Days of Awe, the Days of Repentance, and it's the holiest time in the Jewish calendar. So I wanted to bring to you some readings. During Yom Kippur, we fast for the day. So another reason you don't want to see me on Monday is there will be a fast. But we also read from Isaiah regarding this fast. So I wanted to share those words with you. This is the word of God. Do you think this is the kind of fast I desire? For a day when each one afflicts his heart, when people bow down quickly, but get back up as they were, like a reed on a riverbank, when people only show external signs of repentance. Will you call that the day God wants? No, this is the fast I want, that you loosen the bonds of wickedness, that you undo the straps of the yokes, keeping people down, that you let those oppressed go free, and break all forms of abuse, to share your food with the hungry, and bring right into your homes those who are helpless and destitute. Clothe those who are cold, and don't ignore your own kin, who need your help. When you feed the hungry and support those in trouble, then your light will shine through the darkness, and your gloom turns as bright as the noonday sun. Then God will guide you continually and bring you to be satisfied with all good things and keep you healthy. Then you will be like a fertile garden and like a spring of water whose flow never ceases. Please pray with me. Eternal God, we give thanks for the gift of life, wonder beyond words, for the awareness of soul, our light within, for the world around us so filled with beauty, and for the richness of the earth which sustains us day by day. For all these gifts and more, we thank and bless the source of all goodness. And together we say, Amen.
Senator Heiss is recognized for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Journal of September 21st, 2023 has been examined and found to be correct. I move we dispense with the reading of the Journal, and it stands approved as written.
Without objection, the Journal for September 21, 2023 stands approved as written. Members' leaves of absence are requested and without objection are granted for Senators Adcock, Alexander, Britt, Daniel, Proctor, Salvador, and Smith. Upon the motion of Senator Bill Rabin of Brunswick County, the chair is happy to extend courtesies of the gallery to Judge Scott Ussery. Judge Ussery, if you're with us, if you'd please stand to be recognized. Thank you for being with us today. And upon the motion of Senator Amy Gailey of Alamance County, Chair is happy to extend courtesies of the gallery to Marty Cotis. Mr. Cotis is a member of the UNC Chapel Hill Board of Trustees. Mr. Cotis, if you're with us, thank you for being with us today. Ratification of bills. Clerk will read.
The enrolling clerk reports the following bills duly ratified for presentation to the governor. Senate Bill 477, an act to make various changes to the North Carolina Business Corporation Act and to eliminate duplicate state disclosure requirements for business opportunity sellers that file comparable disclosures with the Federal Trade Commission, as recommended by the North Carolina Bar Association, to modify the right of shareholders of a corporation to inspect the records of a subsidiary entity of that corporation and to standardize the evidence required to prove a debt. Senate Bill 531, an act to amend the dam safety law to allow phased compliance with requirements of the law. The enrolling clerk reports the following bills duly ratified for presentation to the governor. Senate Bill 211, an act to allow political subdivisions from adjoining states to be members of the North Carolina Water and Sewer Authority. House Bill 8, an act to make various changes to the general statutes. House Bill 142, an act to modify penalties and definitions for certain sex offenses against students, to increase the penalties for failure of school administrators to report certain misconduct to the State Board of Education, to require public school units to show students in grades 6 through 12 a video produced by the Center for Safer Schools containing age-appropriate information about sexual abuse, and to define conduct directly related to the Office of Employment as it pertains to the forfeiture of retirement benefits is recommended by the Department of Public Instruction, to clarify the requirement for the Buncombe County Board of Education to establish its electoral districts, and to require the Buncombe County Board of Education and Asheville City Board of Education to study merging the Buncombe County Schools Administrative Unit and the City of Asheville School Administrative Unit. House Bill 361, an act to require the protection and advocacy agencies for North Carolina to report its actions regarding its impact on persons with disabilities.
And upon the motion of Senator Bill Rabin of Brunswick County and Senator Michael Lee of New Hanover County, Chair is happy to extend courtesies of the gallery to Mr. Jimmy Tate. He is a member of the UNCW Board of Trustees. If you're with us, please stand to be recognized. Thank you for being with us today. And unless there's other business, we're ready to go to our calendar. Senator Rabin, for what purpose you rise?
Some motions, please, Mr. President.
State your motions.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that all bills being sent to the governor today be sent by special message.
So ordered.
Conference reports to the following bills have been handed in to the principal clerk. Senate Bill 579, Prevent Harm to Children. House Bill 125, NC Health and Human Services Workforce Act. Senate Bill 452, DOL Omnibus Other Changes. Move that these bills be added to the end of today's full calendar.
Without objection, so ordered.
Further move that House Bill 5, Local Changes Omnibus, be removed from today's calendar and placed on the calendar for September 26th.
So ordered.
Thank you. Mr. President, also move, please, that when House Bill 600 is called to allow the staff on the floor at that time.
So ordered. And Senator Rabin, would you extend that last motion to also include House Bill 259 in the event that members would need members of the staff on the floor for that?
Thank you. Happy to. Yes, sir.
Okay.
So moved.
Third reading roll call. Local bill, House Bill 438. The clerk will read.
House Bill 438, Franklin Granville, recognized common boundary.
Is there discussion or debate on this local bill on third reading? Hearing none. Question for the Senate is the passage on third reading of House Bill 438. All in favor will vote aye. All opposed will vote no. 5 seconds will be allowed for the voting. Clerk will record the vote. Senator Sorry, aye. 43 having voted in the affirmative, none in the negative. House Bill 438 has passed its third reading and will be enrolled. House Bill 415, clerk will read.
House Bill 415, Stop Addiction Fraud Ethics Act of 2023.
Senator Bergen is recognized to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, we passed this bill in 2021, and then it ended up going over to the House, and they used the bill for Medicaid at that time. So it's come back around. This bill, we have a problem in the state, especially up in the Asheville area, with patient brokering. That's where a facility will give someone treatment for alcohol or drug abuse, and then when they get out, they actually have marketing to reintroduce them to the substances and try to get them back in the facility. This will make that a Class G felony. So, again, we supported it 100% the last time. I hope we do again because it needs to be the law. Thank you. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Discussion or debate? Senator Sorry, for what purpose you rise?
Mr. President, I rise to send forth an amendment.
Send forward your amendment. Clerk will read.
Senator Sorry moves to amend the bill.
Senator Sorry is recognized to explain Amendment 1.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is the simple amendment that's related to House Bill 125, which we'll hear a little bit later, that deals with scope of practice for audiologists. I would ask for your support and glad to answer any questions.
Discussion or debate? Hearing none, question for the Senate is the adoption of Amendment 1 to House Bill 415. All in favor of the amendment will vote aye. All opposed vote no. 5 seconds be allowed for the voting. Clerk will record the vote. Senator Grafstein.
Pursuant to Rule 29, I'm sorry, aye. Sorry, wrong thing.
Okay. Grafstein, aye. 43 having voted in the affirmative, none in the negative. Amendment 1 is adopted, and the bill is back before us. Is there discussion or debate on House Bill 415 on second reading? Hearing none, question for the Senate is the passage on second reading of House Bill 415. All in favor will vote aye. All opposed vote no. 5 seconds be allowed for the voting. Clerk will record the vote. Senator Woodard, aye. Senator Settle, aye. Senator Chaudhry, aye. 43 having voted in the affirmative, none in the negative. House Bill 415 is passed its second reading and will, without objection, be read a third time.
The General Assembly of North Carolina enacts.
Discussion or debate on third reading? Hearing none, question for the Senate is the passage on third reading of House Bill 415. All in favor will say aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it, and House Bill 415 is passed its third reading. The amendment will be engrossed, and the bill will be returned to the House. Third reading roll call, House Bill 259. Clerk will read.
House Bill 259, 2023 Appropriations Act.
Senator Jackson is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, we had a hearty debate yesterday afternoon in second reading, and, you know, I've said this in this same position numerous times standing here. You know, I believe every member in this General Assembly, every member, especially in this Senate, that I know better than I do the House, they love North Carolina. We just have different ways of getting to doing what we feel like is the right thing to do. So I would ask for your support of this budget. It does a lot of good for North Carolinians, and I'll be more than happy to entertain any questions. Thank you.
Discussion or debate? Senator Meyer, for what purpose you rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to debate the conference report.
You have the floor.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to talk about two different sections of the budget today, and I appreciate you listening to me yesterday, those who did pay attention. I saw some of you opening your budget and looking at pages 529 and afterwards section 27, when I warned you about the dangerous, expansive powers of the new GovOps and of the public records section when combined. And I know that I am a member of the minority party. I know that there are people in this chamber who don't like listening to me. I understand overnight that I was called hyperbolic for my comments. And I want the members of this chamber to know, and the people of the state of North Carolina to know, that my warnings on these two sections are not hyperbolic. I have walked through each of the hypothetical scenarios that I posed yesterday with staff and then with external experts, attorneys who focus on this area of the law, and gotten confirmation about what they mean for us. It is not a Democratic versus Republican partisan difference. This is about the access of legislative staff to the public's homes, businesses, and records. And this is about the public's right to access to our public records that we all collectively own and that legislators do not own, because the public should own our public records. It was said in response to my comments yesterday that the new public records provisions are simply codifying existing practice at the General Assembly. And I want to tell you at least 4 ways that that is not true. First, there is a complete repeal of the public records law on redistricting records. That is not existing practice. That is a repeal of existing practice. Second, there has never been the ability for legislators to shield our external communications from public records requests. We can shield our internal communications, our internal deliberations, our consultation with staff, but we have never been able to shield our external communications with constituents, with advocates, etc. And this law would change that. Third, we have never been allowed to destroy our records while in office. This law would change that. Fourth, we have never been given the explicit permission to sell our records. And if public records belong to the public, then why would we have the individual ability to sell them? And one question that was left ringing yesterday after I gave my examples and thought about the exchange that was had on the floor with questions about this was, who's the check get written to? If I want to sell my public records of an email exchange with someone who wants to keep them confidential to show that they were not illegally trying to influence my vote, and I agree to sell those records because under this law they would be in my custody completely, and they want to write a check for $1 million or $1 or however much it is to buy those records from me, do they write the check to Paul Coble at the Legislative Services Office because then he gets to turn over the computer files because I asked staff to do that? Do they write the check to my campaign account? Are they allowed to write a check larger than the maximum contribution to my campaign? Or do they write the check to me personally? Am I allowed to profit from my service to the people of North Carolina by selling my public records? Second, the expansion of GovOps with no guardrails should cause all of us concern. And I want to drive it home with as personal of an example as I can give. I mentioned yesterday that the expansion of GovOps would mean, and it was confirmed in the debate on the floor between 2 other members, that it means that if you do business with the state and your business is registered at your home, that partisan legislative staff from GovOps could go into your home without a warrant to get documents from your home, including computer files. So I asked our partisan GovOps staff to look at 2 sets of public documents. First, how many members of the Senate have declared that they have business with the state of North Carolina? And we got a list of all of us who have declared, as we should ethically, that we have business with the state of North Carolina. And second, of those people that do, which of them have that business registered at their home address? And there are 2. And I have told those 2 members who they are, but I'm not going to mention them on the floor because I believe that they deserve public secrecy in some way, although this is all publicly available information, but I don't need to say who it is on the floor. But this means that if I wanted our partisan GovOps staff to go into their homes to take their documents, that our partisan legislative staff could do that. I am not being hyperbolic. This was confirmed to me by our staff. I am upset because this is a level of intrusion of government that I don't think the majority of us want, whether we're Republican or Democrat. I think we should take it very seriously, and I think that whenever we do technical corrections, we should have a group of people across party lines looking at both of these provisions and figuring out if there are some additional guardrails that need to be put in place. Thank you for listening to me on that today. You can tune out the next part I'm going to talk about because you usually tune me out when I'm talking about the environment, and that's what we're going to talk about next. I simply want to point out, as we didn't debate it yesterday, that this budget is quite harmful to any efforts that the state has undertaken, especially Governor Cooper's strong leadership to address climate change. It prohibits us from working with other states to reduce carbon emissions. It prohibits us from incentivizing the use of electric vehicles rather than gasoline-burning vehicles, which I would point out seems to be a quite confrontational message to all of the major businesses related to the electrification industry that we're trying to recruit to this state. If you're not concerned about those things, maybe you'll be concerned that this budget makes it easier to have wastewater discharged into your community, fewer clean water protections, it has fewer clean air protections, it rolls those back. It eliminates local ability to regulate plastic bags, which maybe you don't care about, but in some areas of our state, as we know, plastic bags are both a danger to the wildlife and community that surround it, as well as a wasteful use of single-use plastics. And finally, a point that is related to the partisan nature of this budget. We all hear in our districts about our challenges in this state with water facilities and the need to have billions of dollars of upgrades for wastewater facilities. And this budget takes most of the money that has traditionally been available through competitive grant process for wastewater facilities and turns that money into direct appropriations, thereby picking winners and losers of who gets to have improvements to their wastewater systems. I don't think that's the right way to govern North Carolina. Thank you for listening to me today. I encourage you to vote against this budget.
Further discussion or debate? Hearing none, question for the Senate is a passage on third reading of the conference report to House Bill 259. All in favor will vote aye. All opposed will vote no. 5 seconds be allowed for the voting. Clerk, record the vote. Senator Perry? Senator Perry, aye. 26 having voted in the affirmative, 17 in the negative. House Bill 259 conference report passes its third reading, and the House will be so notified. Conference report for adoption, Senate Bill 749. The clerk will read.
Senate Bill 749, no partisan advantage in elections.
Senator Paul Newton is recognized to explain the conference report motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, the conference report for 749 is substantially the version that we passed out of this chamber in July. It simply makes a few date changes. It moves the effective date of the board structure changes for both the state board and the county boards of elections from July 1 to January 1, 2024. Second, it moves the effective date of the administrative transfer to the Secretary of State's office from July 1, 2024 to January 1, 2024. Third, and finally, it adds language to deal with a conforming change that central staff needed to make related to the timing of the meeting of the state board in years containing a presidential primary. For 2024 only, to transition to the new board structure, the statutorily required meeting will occur on December 19th, 2023, rather than January 2nd, 2024. I commend the conference report to you. Thank you.
Discussion or debate? Senator Marcus, for what purpose you rise?
See if Senator Newton would yield for a question.
Senator Newton, do you yield?
I do.
He yields.
Thank you. I am curious about why we're changing the date when we are shifting a major job of the Board of Elections over to the Secretary of State's office. It's It's my understanding the Secretary of State's office would like more time if you're going to require these new jobs be in this new office. Instead, you're giving them less time. So I'm wondering why we're moving it at all and why we're doing it faster now with this most recent change, if you could explain that.
Sure. The change over to the Secretary of State is purely administrative. She's not going to have to pick up any of the substantive workings of the Board of Elections. So it can be done sooner rather than later. And what we're trying to do with the date changes is not disturb the municipal elections that are happening, but also not disturb the primary of the general election. So it's trying to thread a needle to be as non-disruptive as possible. It's as simple as that. And of course, we're making the change in part because where the Board of Elections originally resided allowed our governor, who has partisan control over the board, to be involved with some decisions in 2020 that eroded North Carolinians' confidence in the integrity of elections. And this should shore up the confidence of North Carolinians to have it reporting on a different line for administrative purposes. Thank you.
Further discussion or debate? Senator Mayfield, for what purpose you rise?
To debate the report.
You have the floor.
Thank you very much. I want to, there's of course a lot in this bill to talk about, but the provision that I want to mention is specifically the provision about appointments made to the Environmental Management Commission, which got stuck over in the House kind of at the last minute. Now, clearly, this provision was left out of Senate Bill 512 when it came through. It's kind of surprising to me that somehow that got overlooked. And so this bill is fixing it, and as we said when 512 came through, we clearly think this bill is unconstitutional. We think we have, it's clearly inappropriate and improper to be changing these appointments, and the only reason that this legislature is doing it is because of the change in the North Carolina Supreme Court, and you think you can get a different decision. Short term, I'm very concerned about what these changes to the EMC appointments will mean for the environment of North Carolina. Long term, though, I am worried about what these changes mean for our state. And this gets to a larger point that I want to make about this bill and the budget and some others. By my count, once this bill and the budget become law, we will have taken 6 of the 7 steps away from a democracy and toward an authoritarian form of government. And in case you don't know, here are those 7 steps. Politicizing independent institutions. In our case, that would be the judiciary. We started that when we made those elections partisan, and that close relationship between the politicized court and this body has only become clearer and clearer in the bills that we have dealt with this year. Spreading disinformation. The public records provisions of the budget that Senator Meyer just talked about, allowing us to destroy our records, is much the same as spreading disinformation. If you can't get the real information out there into the public, if they don't have access to it, it allows disinformation to spread. Aggrandizing executive power and weakening checks and balances. Now, in our case, we have a weak executive, and so we are aggrandizing power in this body. We are weakening the separation of powers that is established in our Constitution and is a foundational principle of democracy. And we have weakened it in 512, in this bill, in the budget, and in other bills. 5. Quashing criticism or dissent. Need we look any further than the events of yesterday involving the Speaker and one of his members? 6. Actually, this is 5, sorry. Marginalizing vulnerable communities. We need look no further than the anti-LGBTQ, anti-trans bills that we have passed earlier this year. 6. Corrupting elections. This bill and Senate Bill 747 take our election system to a more unstable place, not a more stable, predictable one. Now, the last one is the only one by my count that we have not done, and that is stoking violence. And I am thankful that we have not seen that yet, and I would be shocked if we did. But of course, I would have been shocked if you, at the beginning of this session and when I first walked into this chamber, that we would have done any of those things. But we, and by my count, have done 6 of 7. Now, we are not just tiptoeing down this path, in my view. Instead, we have crested the top of the roller coaster, and we are beginning to hurtle down the other side. All of us should be alarmed by this, and I am more disturbed that not enough of us are. I do not understand this. I keep a number of quotes on my bulletin board to remind me why I do this work and remind me to exercise political courage when necessary. The quote I want to share with you today is from Martin Luther King Jr., and it reads as this. Quote, "On some positions, cowardice asks the question, is it safe? Expediency asks the question, is it politic? And vanity comes along and asks the question, is it popular? But conscience asks the question, is it right? And there comes a time when one must take a position that is neither safe, nor politic, nor popular, but he must do it because conscience tells him it is right." Voting for this bill and the others that we have considered today and previously in this session is not right. And somewhere deep inside you, I think that you know that. I ask you to listen to that voice and vote no. Thank you.
Further discussion or debate? Hearing none, the question for the Senate is the adoption of the conference report to Senate Bill 749. All in favor will vote aye. All opposed vote no. 5 seconds be allowed for the voting clerk. Record the vote.
Still destroys democracy in North Carolina. Vote no.
I'd ask that the Sergeant at Arms staff clear the gallery of any disturbers.
I'm not disturbed. I'm electorate. You're supposed to listen to me. Can you just listen to 7 readings?
26 having voted in the affirmative, 15 in the negative. The conference report is adopted. Senator Lowe? No. Senator Chaudhry, no. 26-17. The conference report is adopted. The House will be notified. Senate Bill 452. The clerk will read.
Senate Bill 452, NC Department of Insurance Omnibus AB.
Senator Johnson is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, Senate Bill 452 was the Department of Insurance bill. It passed this chamber unanimously, went over to the House. They added some provisions. It came back. So what they've added, we've decided to keep in the conference report. That would be underinsured motorist offset regards to auto insurance, a reduction of small group insurance from 20 to 12, and an increase in the beach plan limits, which we also passed through this chamber unanimously. I'm sure most of you have received some concerning emails about that, so we're going to go and get that taken care of today. In addition, we've added Senate Bill 636, which has passed this chamber already concerning high school athletics, and also Senate Bill 125, which deals with auto insurance rate making, and it's designed to depopulate the facility that we have and also reduce the recoupment that all North Carolinians pay by putting more of an emphasis on DWIs, reckless driving, and other major violations. Would ask for your support. Stand for any questions.
Discussion or debate? Hearing none, question for the Senate is the adoption of the conference report, Senate Bill 452. All in favor will vote aye. All opposed vote no. 5 seconds be allowed for the voting clerk. Record the vote. (43) having voted in the affirmative, none in the negative. The conference report is adopted. The House will be notified, the bill will be enrolled and sent to the governor. Members, I believe I skipped over House Bill 600. House Bill 600, the clerk will read.
House Bill 600, Regulatory Reform Act of 2023.
Senator Sanderson is recognized to explain the motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. First, I'd like to start out by thanking all of the people who have been involved in Reg Reform Bill. Usually, Reg Reform Bill is a very hard bill to see through to the end, and I just appreciate the co-sponsors on our original Reg Reform Bill from the Senate. I appreciate the conference committees on both sides that were appointed to see that after we changed the House bill. And most of all, I want to, Senator Berger, thank the staff, both our central staff and your staff, our policy staff. We passed our original Reg Reform Bill out of the Senate back in June by a very good margin. We sent it over to the House, or they sent theirs to us, we sent ours to theirs. We decided at the very end, after looking at everything, that we would pursue the House bill instead of the Senate bill. There's been a lot of changes to it in the past 3 or 4 months, especially in the last 2 or 3 weeks. But just to go over very briefly what has been removed, what has been modified, and what has been changed. We have removed 3 provisions from our original Senate version, Section 8.5, which would have made the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers subject to our shallow draft funding rules, the same as any other entity in the state of North Carolina is. We removed Section 25, which would have codified medical records retention requirements. Those rules were adopted in July and make this no longer necessary. And Section 33.5, which would have allowed certain manufacturers to install signs without meeting the general contractor requirements. We've modified 7 sections that were in our original Senate version. Section 2, which adds 2 stormwater program changes that will make obtaining a permit easier for many new applicants. The first change clarifies that the DEQ Wilmington office cannot continue requiring new applicants to modify existing permits on unaffiliated adjacent properties to obtain a permit or as a condition of their original permit. The second directs DEQ to rescind permits after 5 years for properties that have yet to be developed. Such permits have slowed down permitting for all new applicants. Section 6 adds a condition requiring Marine Fisheries and the Wildlife Commission to provide a joint status report by May 1st of each year recommending ways to incentivize fish harvesting reporting. Section 7 adds dredging activities under the shortened 401 certification process and gives DEQ 30 additional days to issue the certification when a public hearing is held on those rules or requested. Section 14, the House required that we restore 15,000-gallon connection cap in the 2020 Farm Act. The Senate version would have allowed all wastewater systems within the Neuse River Basin to use the 1999 total maximum daily limits transport factors, but we, in talks with the House, we decided that we would go back to their 15,000 rule. Section 18 clarifies language in Senate Bill 673 regarding wastewater flow allocations. Many public systems continue to allocate wastewater capacity at much higher flows than prescribed in Senate Bill 673. The changes clarify that allocation shall be determined at 75 gallons per bedroom per day or a lower rate if it's approved by DEQ. Section 29 changed the number of days by which local health departments must perform a reinspection at the request of a restaurant from 5 days to 10 business days. And Section 30 makes medical or technical changes to the stroke and thrombectomy provision to include endovascular services also. And now to very briefly go over the 16 new items that has been added since both of those bills went through the chamber. Section 8 directs the Environmental Management Commission to study the narrative water quality standard. The Commission established that standard almost 50 years ago. It is the basis for establishing drinking water quality standards for many emerging compounds. Section 25 gives the Commissioner of Agriculture the authority to mitigate poultry and livestock supply chain disruptions resulting from a lack of capacity at rendering facilities or landfills. Section 34 adds procurement changes requested by the Department of Information Technology. Section 38 delays the effective date of 6 appraisal board rules, House Bill 48, that has been passed here. These rules create an alternative method of meeting the licensure and certification requirements for appraisals and revised appraiser. Isn't that kind of fast? If we got a timer on this, well, then that means I can take the rest of the afternoon. These rules create an alternative method of meeting the licensure and certification requirements for appraisals and revise appraiser trainee supervision requirements and reporting requirements. This is done because we're having a hard time giving license to appraisers. Section 40 allows proposed charter schools to reserve water and sewer capacity for 24 months when the public system has the available capacity. Section 41 adds a deadline for notification of the codifier of repealed rules and gives the codifier the authority to remove repealed rules from the administrative code. Section 42 clarifies the Administrative Procedures Act requirement for agencies to adopt requirements as rules. 43 exempts heating and cooling repair work under a competitive bid group contract from public contract bidding requirements. Section 44 prohibits counties and cities from requiring a permit fee or approval for installing and using battery-charged security fences on property zoned for non-residential use. That's a requirement that was passed in House Bill 385. Section 45 relaxes the licensing requirements for transliterators and interpreters to help with the current shortage that's being experienced by those folks. That was in House Bill 566. And last, Section 46 prohibits an employer from discriminating against demoting or discharging an employee who is a member of the Civil Air Patrol because of an absence from work to perform duties related to a state-approved mission or to a U.S. Air Force authorized mission when the absence is for no more than 7 days. Mr. President, that's the changes. I would ask for the body to concur with this bill, and I appreciate your support on it and stand for any questions.
Further discussion or debate? Senator Murdoch, for what purpose you rise?
To speak on the conference report.
You have the floor.
First, I want to thank Senator Anderson, just received the oximeter there, Sanderson, on that great summary, and am aware that there were some harmful provisions that could have made it in the final version from the House that didn't. So I do want to start by thanking you for that, but do have to draw attention to Section 29 that would prevent two proposed DOA rules from becoming effective. These rules will require vendors who utilize subcontractors to make good faith efforts in recruiting hub participation for subcontracts within our state. And I'm going to just shed light on some comments that DOA made to the Rules Committee when this bill first came before us. And these rules, the second of the rule is to provide historically underutilized businesses a good faith opportunity to subcontract with state vendors. And the rule truly only requires that vendors make good efforts. There is no quota, there is no set-aside. It's a similar requirement that would, it's not a requirement that forces them to use hub vendors. It simply says they should reach out to them so that they're aware of these opportunities. The other reason that I have to shed light on this is for those hub vendors, those women-owned businesses, those minority-owned businesses. That's typically the bulk of their work are those subcontracts. They simply I'll wait for the phone to go off. Thank you. They typically don't have the capacity or the resources or the staff to be prime contractors, so typically they go after that subcontracting work. The final iteration of these proposed rules requires vendors who wish to contract with the state for good faith efforts and services to do 5 of 11 actions to demonstrate these good faith efforts to recruit hub participation just for subcontractors. Vendors simply check a box to show whether or not they are subcontracting. Agencies are not required to investigate or verify vendors' response, so they truly are just good faith efforts. This is not a burdensome request. It's also worth noting that similar good faith effort requirements have been in place with DOA in regards to construction rules for over 2 decades and have been successful and largely welcomed by a vast majority of private sector construction partners. In a previous life, I used to do some minority business contracting and worked in the transportation sector, and we actually have a number of vendors that graduated from the HUB program, so they do not remain HUB vendors forever. They get enough work, they graduate, and they're able to go after these contracts on their own. And also want to add, my own grandfather came from a little town in South Carolina, Bamberg, left home at the age of 12, had 1 truck, was a brick mason, and eventually began to be able to compete for these state contracts. He went on to actually open up the first and only concrete facility in Guilford County to be owned by African American. So I've seen firsthand the value of what these contracts can do, not just for individuals, but for their entire families, to literally lift them out of poverty and allow them to provide for themselves. So finally, these rules represent an important step in the right direction to provide all North Carolinians with business opportunities and the opportunity to work in this state. It provides an avenue for HUB businesses to get access to subcontracts without requiring the states to use them, without creating a set-aside for HUBs, and without penalizing vendors that do not use HUBs. Again, they're simply good faith efforts, and they should remain in effect. Thank you.
Further discussion or debate? Hearing none, the question for the Senate is the adoption of the conference report to House Bill 600. All in favor will vote aye. All opposed will vote no. 5 seconds be allowed for the voting. Clerk, record the vote. Up. And before we record that vote, without objection, a leave of absence is requested for Senator Moffitt for the remainder of the session. Senator Heiss, aye. 25 having voted in the affirmative, 16 in the negative. The conference report is adopted and the House will be notified. Senate Bill 579, the clerk will read.
Senate Bill 579, Prevent Harm to Children.
Senator Buck Newton is recognized to explain the motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, colleagues. I was hoping on the order of the calendar that we would extend our streak of unanimous votes with this bill, but we went back to regular form and broke our streak before it got going. So hopefully we can restart it here on this bill. We passed this bill originally in the Senate unanimously. Its original form was to increase the penalty for those who provide minors with obscene materials. It went to the House. There were some changes over there. We didn't concur. What we've done in this conference report is, of course, our original bill, so hopefully that doesn't raise any objections amongst this body. Additionally, we added in House Bill 591, which passed the House 114 to nothing, and it did pass our J Committee with a few minor changes, but we didn't get to the point where we passed it here on our floor. And so that's an addition to this conference report. The only other addition is some cleanup language offered by the District Attorneys Association. So I hope and encourage everybody to vote for it. I think this is the right thing to do, and I'm very happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Discussion or debate? Hearing none, the question for the Senate is the adoption of the conference report, Senate Bill 579. All in favor will vote aye. All opposed vote no. 5 seconds be allowed for the voting. Clerk, record the vote. (42) having voted in the affirmative, none in the negative. The conference report is adopted. The House will be notified, and the conference report on this, as well as any other Senate bills that are in conference reports that have been passed by the Senate today, will be sent to the governor. House Bill 125. Clerk will read.
House Bill 125, NC Health and Human Services Workforce Act.
Senator Sawrey is recognized to explain the motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is a conference report for House Bill 125 that's started off on one place on the House side and it's taken quite a journey to get here. I appreciate my colleagues in the Senate, Senator Raven, Senator Heiss, and staff for working on this, as well as everybody on the House side that participated in it. What this bill will do now, the three major parts that I want to point out is it addresses hospital violence protection. It takes a major step forward in protecting our healthcare workers that are working in medical practices and at hospitals in North Carolina. Updates the scope of practice for audiology in North Carolina, and then also provides a pathway for licensure to veterans and their families that have medical licenses from other states. And again, also thank you to the Health Chair, Senator Bergen, Senator Corbin, and Senator Krovic for their assistance and guidance as well. Ask for your support.
Discussion or debate? Hearing none. Question for the Senate is the adoption of the conference report to House Bill 125. All in favor will vote aye. All opposed will vote no. 5 seconds be allowed for the voting. Clerk will record the vote. Senator Garrett, aye. Senator Grafstein.
This was to be my Rule 29 request to be excused from voting.
Okay. 41 having voted in the affirmative, none in the negative. The conference report is adopted and the House will be notified. Members, I believe that completes our calendar for this morning. Are there any notices or announcements? Senator Chaudhary, for what purpose you rise?
Mr. President, I believe you overlooked my failure to cast a vote on House Bill 600, and I would like to cast my vote as a no, Mr. President.
Senator Chaudhary, we have you excused on that bill under Rule 29.
Oh. Okay, thank you.
Other notices or announcements? Senator Craven, for what purpose you rise?
Moment of personal privilege, Mr. President.
You have the floor.
Members, you have a senatorial statement in front of you. Randolph County lost a great community advocate in Larry Reed earlier this week. Larry was diagnosed with stage 4 colon and liver cancer 3 weeks ago and did everything to fight his last fight the last couple weeks, and he went on Monday. I'm going to go ahead and tell you, folks, there wasn't a finer man in Randolph County. Larry was the voice of WKXR for 30 years. He was the voice of Randolph County, and I would appreciate you thinking about his family today as he was laid to rest yesterday. And, Mr. President, if it's appropriate, I would ask this body adjourn in honor and memory of Larry Reed. Thank you.
Other notices or announcements? Senator Grafstein, for what purpose you rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. Personal privilege.
You have the floor.
I just wanted to thank Senator Sanderson for accepting the ox meter, and I have a long speech I'd like to give about that, but I won't.
At some point, we may need more than one ox meter in the Senate. Further notices or announcements? Senator Woodard, for what purpose you rise?
Moment of personal privilege.
You have the floor.
Friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. I come not to bury Senator Sanderson, but to praise him. That he was just doing his job, and that presentation could have been twice as long. So I appreciate the fact that he shortened it up and gave us a concise report on a pretty major piece of legislation. Thank you, Senator Sanderson. I got your back.
Senator Woodard, I don't think he can vote in Durham. Other notices or announcements? If not, Senator Heiss is recognized for a motion.
Thank you once again, Mr. President. I move that the Senate do now adjourn in honor and memory of Larry Reed, subject to the provisions of Senate Rule 24.1 to reconvene on Tuesday, September 26, 2023 at 2 p.m. This will be a non-voting session. No voting sessions are anticipated next week.
Motion is that the Senate do now adjourn in memory of Larry Reed, subject to the stipulations stated by Senator Heist, to reconvene on Tuesday, September 26, 2023 at 2 p.m. Seconded by Senator Sanderson. All in favor will say aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the Senate stands adjourned.